A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in for today's webinar on ICV in association with Aldar. My name is Lydia Wummeltiagi, and I'm working at the European Enterprise Group at MBG Corporate Services, and it is my pleasure to be the host for today's session. As part of our ongoing series of webinars, we are delighted to talk about the unified ICV program today. The UAE has now adopted a single ICV certification process across all participating entities, which include Aldar, the Department of Economic Development, ADNOC, and Abu Dhabi ports. Recently, Mubadala and INEC have also signed a framework agreement on ICV. Just a very brief overview on the agenda of today. To start with, I will give an introduction about Aldar and MBG Corporate Services. After this, Mr. Taha Singapore-Wala, ICV Director, will be providing us insights on the ICV program. Then we will have Mrs. Leia Aldamani, Senior Vice President, Sustainability and Supplier Management, and Mr. Ravi Valya, Assistant Vice President in-country value program from Aldar, run us through the sustainable and ethical procurement initiatives and welfare program by Aldar. At the end of the session, Mr. Piyush Jorda will elaborate on some of the key considerations in terms of ICV. We will close the session with a Q&A. In case you have any questions during the session, please feel free to use the question answer box at the bottom of the screen, and we will either address these questions live at the end of the session or post this session. This is the first webinar we are organizing jointly with Aldar. Aldar has been at the forefront of developing the residential communities as well as retail establishments in the capital. The company has developed some of Abu Dhabi's most iconic and complex projects, such as Yas Marina Circuit, Ferrari World, Sun and Sky Towers, Al Raha Beach, Gate Towers, Yas Mall, Central Market Development, Watani, among others. The company owns a sizable land bank in strategic locations throughout the Emirate and was listed on the Abu Dhabi securities market in 2004. A key focus of Aldar is on creating long-term value for its stakeholder and providing investors with an opportunity to secure recurring stable return by investing into the future of Abu Dhabi. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Mrs. Leia Aldamani, Senior Vice President, Sustainability and Supplier Management, and Mr. Ravi Valya, Assistant Vice President in-country who have joined us from Aldar today. Mrs. Leia Aldamani's portfolio reflects over 10 years with deep experience from both financial and business sectors, with national and international professional service in the UK and Abu Dhabi in fields of sustainability, business development, audit, excellence and quality assurance, business strategy, risk management, business continuity management, knowledge management, and a qualified EFQM assessor, where she was part of an international team of assessors assessing a Dubai-based international organizations. She's the founder and chairwoman of the Diversity and Inclusion Board at Aldar Properties and currently has established and is leading the in-country values worker welfare program for Aldar and a sustainable strategy for procurement. A core member of the ICV committee and heads the procurement and sustainability in Aldar supplier management department. Further, I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Ravi Valya. Mr. Ravi is a qualified chartered accountant, having work experience predominantly in audit and finance. During his professional career, he has been associated with the oil and gas industry for over 15 years, with initial experience in accounting and advisory service. In his previous role with a consultancy firm, he has jointly worked with ADNOC and Department of Economic Development Abu Dhabi in advising and establishing the ICV, the local content and the electricity tariff incentive program, respectively. He is currently employed with Aldar, where his roles and responsibilities include implementation and monitoring of the ICV program across the organization and its subsidiary. As a member of the ICV committee, Ravi is also responsible for pre-clearance of the ICV certificate, along with audits and quality assurance of the certifying body. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today. For those who don't know us yet, MBG Corporate Services has been established 2 decades ago, headquartered in Singapore, having 16 offices across 6 locations, with which we cover Middle East, Asia, and Europe. Here in UAE, we have more than 200 employees spread across our offices in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Sharjah. Our 500 employees globally work out of our offices in Singapore, China, Japan, India, Germany, and the UAE. We serve more than 3,000 clients globally, and we are extremely proud that more than 100 of them are Fortune 500 companies. As a firm, we support organizations at every stage of their life cycle, from inception through growth story journey all the way through maturity and diversification. Needless to say that during especially these times, companies are looking for guidance and support on how to deal with the development, no matter what stage of their life cycles they are at. We have an extremely wide range of services which enables us to support organizations wherever they are in their journey. Of course, we have the traditional audit and assurance practice under which the ICV certificate falls. We do a lot of work on risk advisory, and we are having directors heading indirect and direct taxation, for which we are a registered tax agency with the Federal Tax Authority. In terms of mergers and acquisition, we support companies both on both sell side as well as buy side, right from deal sourcing until post-merger integration. We have further a legal team currently supporting many of our clients on the new economic substance regulation, and we continue to support companies in their strategy and transformation requirement. In terms of technology advisory, we provide services such as IT and robotic process automation, where we help companies with large number of transactions to automate these processes. As a firm, MBG Corporate Services works industry agnostic, and you will find our clientele across all diversified industry. Yeah, and with this, I would like to hop into the topic of ICV, and I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Taher Singapore-Walle now. Mr. Taher has over 12 years of right professional experience across finance and accounts domain under internal control, review, and analysis of financial and statutory audits. Taher's experience includes audit and other engagement in various industries, including health sector, construction companies, manufacturing, insurance, investment firms, oil and gas industry, educational institution, and other. He has regularly delivered professional training courses and seminars held by various international organizations. Taher, over to you, please.
Thank you, Lydia, for that present introduction. I wish a very good morning to all the attendees, and I'm here to take you through the ICV program in detail. So before we quickly jump into the ICV program, as Lydia mentioned, MBG Corporate Services, we have been in business for over a couple of decades, and we have a huge experience in terms of our certification activities. We have been associated with in-country value program for almost a couple of years now. And at the same time, we have done various certification programs across the globe in all the regions where we are present. So we have been experienced in various certification programs in relation to register of companies with the various income tax acts across the world, various customs and excise authorities, as well as foreign exchange and management act certification assignments. So that gives us keeps us in a unique position in terms of our certification experience. Now can we go on to the next slide? So we start off with the ICV program, or the in-country value program. The in-country value program was basically launched in late 2017. The program was started off by EDNOC in 2017, early 2018. The program mainly focuses on improving the localization within the country to make sure that there is a improvement in GDP diversification as well as various employment opportunities within the region. And due to the success that the program has seen over the last couple of years, we have seen that various other government as well as semi-government organizations such as Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development, Aldar Properties, Abu Dhabi Ports, and very recently Mubadala and INAC have also joined the program. So that through that we have seen that the program has expanded its horizons, and we continue to see that in the future as well. At this point of time, there are 21 ICV certification bodies that have been authorized to issue ICV certificates for various companies, and we are proud to be one of them. Rahul, next slide, please. So basically, as we are talking about the ICV, or the in-country value program, and as the name itself suggests, the program mainly focuses on what a company does to contribute, or what value it contributes within the country. So there are about 6 factors, as we see on the screen, on the basis of which companies will be valued and basis of which the company will be given an ICV score. So just to give you a short summary of it, obviously the first two principles are the goods manufacturing cost and the third party spend, which is the local spending done by the company in UAE. So here we review all the purchases of the company in terms of whether the suppliers are locally based or they are purchased or the purchases are happening from outside UAE. Also, the company's investments are evaluated, and also the company's contribution in terms of its employment opportunities offered through both Emirati as well as expatriate employees will overall calculate the ICV score of the company. A company that is also engaged into export revenue, which helps in bringing in foreign exchange within the country, will help company get a few additional points in terms of its ICV score. Yes, Rahul, next slide. So, as we have been discussing, it is very clear that the agenda of the program or the basic principles on which the program is based has remained the same over the last few years. As we see, the main agenda of the program is to make sure that more and more sourcing or procurement of goods and services is done from within UAE. So thus, supply chain localization remains one of the top agenda of the program in terms of GDP diversification and also job creation and amortization. So, and through this program, we have seen a huge success in terms of also creating job opportunities as far as Emirati employees are concerned. Yes, Rahul, next slide. So, as we see the evolution of the ICV program on the screen, earlier it was more of an ad hoc ICV program, as we see in the logo below, and over the period of last couple of years, it has expanded, and now we have a unified ICV. So there is no ad hoc logo as well now. So basically, this unified ICV certificate, which is issued by the 21 certifying bodies, is accepted across all the participating agencies, and we see the list of participating agencies as well on the top. So it has expanded only from EDNOC to DED, Aldar, Abu Dhabi Ports, Mubadala as well as NI. Yes, sir. So just to understand the depth over here, so we are not only talking about 6 participating agencies. So when we talk about DED, it will basically include about 64 entities, which gets covered under the Abu Dhabi Department of Economic Development. So any company that wants to participate into a tender with any of these companies or any of these agencies will be required to submit an ICV certificate as a part of the tendering process. So that's how quickly the ICV program has grown. Yes, Rahul, next slide please. So here we will just understand which companies are eligible to obtain an ICV score, because generally companies have this doubt that we are based in a free zone, or maybe we are not dealing directly with EDNOC or Aldar or any of the participating agencies. Are we required to get an ICV certificate? And now first let me discuss the eligibility. So any company across UAE can get their ICV certification done. There are no restrictions on any particular regions or any type of companies which are prevented from getting their ICV certificates. Now, the basic requirements to get the ICV certification done is obviously the company will require the audited financial statements as per IFRS and licensed auditor from MOE, which is the Ministry of Economy. So, I think 2 critical points that the companies need to keep in mind over here is the financials should be as per IFRS. So any other accounting standards such as UK GAAP or any other GAPs which maybe they are following as a practice because of their head office. So these financial statements will not be accepted, and they should further be signed off by a licensed auditor from MOE. Once a company has these conditions satisfied, they can straight away proceed and get their ICV certification done. In case no, companies are allowed to go one level up maybe to their head office or the parent company. And based on their financial statements, if those financial statements are again as per IFRS and as per from a licensed auditor from MOE, we can use those financial statements along with the management accounts to segregate the numbers of the branch or the local entity, and we can proceed with ICV certification. So in any case, we are allowed to go only one level up, and the minimum condition of audited financial statements as per IFRS, and it should be audited by a licensed auditor from MOE should be satisfied. So that is the eligibility criteria to proceed with the ICV certifications. Yes, Rahul, next slide, please. Okay, so this looks a bit complex. So what we will do is we will try to break up the formula into each segment, and we will demonstrate how the ICV score is calculated and what each factor contributes in terms of the ICV score. So the ICV score is basically a percentage out of 100 which is given to each company. So each company will have, in terms of percentage, what is its ICV score over 100%. So as we see on the screen, the first four columns. So the ICV score is broken up into these four categories, where the first major section that contributes to the total ICV score of the company is the manufacturing cost and the third party spend. So here we are referring to the manufacturing costs of the company or the local spending of the company in terms to carry out its business operations. So any company that has its business activities done in UAE, an analysis of all their business expenses other than payroll costs will be done to break them into expenses done with vendors within UAE, vendors outside UAE, as well as vendors having ICV certificates and vendors not having ICV certificates. So based on this, the numerator, as we see, is calculated, which is the manufacturing cost or the procurement cost within UAE, and we divide it by the total cost of the company. This section will contribute about 50% of the total ICV score of the company. The next major element is the investments, which is basically all the investments done by a company in UAE. So here by investments, we are referring to all kinds of fixed assets as well as investment properties, as well as intangible assets in terms of software and other costs. And then the last 25% comes from the payroll. So 15% is allocated to Emirati employees and 10% is allocated to expatriates. I'm just giving the overall breakup, and as we go into this presentation, we will discuss each one of them in detail and what a company is required to maintain, what documents the company is required to maintain to claim score in each of these areas will also be discussed as well. Then there is a bonus element as well available for 5%. This bonus can be claimed from three particular areas. One is in case the company is engaged into export revenue, in case the company has Emirati employees, and in case there is a growth in net book value as compared to the previous year, they shall be eligible for a bonus. So basically, if the company is missing out on the ICV score in any of the first four categories, they will have a chance to make it up through the bonus segment. So that is the overall formula that will drive the ICV score calculations of a company. And as we go into the detail into each of these areas, before that, I'll just quickly hand over the mic to Mr. Ravi, just to speak on the Aldar sustainable and the Aldar supply chain aspects.
Thank you very much. Leah, would you like to go in and introduce yourself first?
Sure. Thank you very much for attending this seminar today. My name is Leah Aldamani, and as said in the introduction, I head the sustainability department Under Aldar procurement, this includes ICV, sustainability, workers' welfare, supplier management, as well as ICV. Now, within our Aldar sustainable procurement, I'll just give you an overhead. We look at the ICV certificate, also the social aspect, which is the workers' welfare, as well as the environmental aspect, which is the sustainable ethical supply chain. The reason why we're mentioning this today on an ICV forum is for when you do work or decide to work with Aldar, you'll understand that this is all part of the parcel. Now, the ethical supply chain, as you can see there, we're looking at sustainable procurement. We have a sustainable procurement strategy. We have the sustainable procurement procedures, which we'll take you through later on in the presentation. As well as what we look for is the sustainable policy on your side. And we also have our own material procurement guidelines, which also encompass the type of sustainability or the minimum amount of sustainability that we require in our projects. Now, when it comes to workers' welfare, we are very big on workers' welfare, and we do need to see, when you do work with Aldar, is a workers' welfare policy. We will put together a compliance plan that we would be auditing throughout your time with Aldar and on our projects. Of course, we have a supplier guide, so you understand everything that is going on, and we do use risk assessments on our suppliers to understand where you are on the journey when it comes to workers' welfare. Now, as the presenters have already stated, we are part of the ICV program. We're actually part of the committee there. Ravi will take you through in more detail of how we implement ICV within Aldar, because it's very different to the way it's implemented on the other entities. Next slide. So let me just take you through very quickly through the sustainable supply chain. What you see here is our 5 principles on the left-hand side. Through these principles, Aldar want to ensure that the development of our projects is aligned to our sustainable objectives, especially with regards to environmental standards and material procurement. We have also implemented a CSR and sustainability requirements for all our suppliers within our registration, pre-qualification, and in our tenders. We are committed to enhancing the standard performance through our integrated supplier procurement strategy. What we are looking for is an insight into our suppliers to see if sustainability is a priority with you, is it on your agenda, and is it part of your strategy? We have a formal mechanism for screening suppliers based on their social and environmental responsibilities. The objectives around this is that we want to reduce the negative environmental impact of Aldar projects. We intend to deliver projects with an improved selection and utilization of products and services. We are looking to upskill the supply chain. We want to encourage suppliers to adopt practices that minimize negative impacts on the environment and on social. We have a 360-degree supplier feedback mechanism, and we want to work in partnership with our suppliers to achieve these common goals. We are looking to increase the percentage of items procured with eco labels or EDMs, and we also want to restrict the procurement of single-use plastics within our developments. Next slide. Here is our workers' welfare slide. Here we want for you to understand that we have one policy. We have 10 principles, which you can see outlined below, and we have 23 requirements. Now, the Aldar Workers' Welfare Programme has been embedded throughout the procurement process, starting at pre-qualification. If you do not have the basic requirements of workers' welfare, and when we talk about workers' welfare, we're talking about the UAE standard of workers' welfare, it will be very difficult for you to move on and get on a bidders list. So within these 10 requirements, we have 23 principles. 7 are critical, and these are the ones required at pre-qualification. Our workers' welfare policies are integrated throughout our corporate values. We will meet our commitment through building controls. We require our contractual partners to apply these principles to your supply chain. We also conduct audits on suppliers against these workers' welfare requirements, and this has already been implemented on many of our projects to date. What we do is monitor our own operations and those of our contractual partners. We need to identify any non-conformances and put controls in place where necessary. And we also respond effectively to remedy these issues through this monitoring. So when you do sign up to work with Aldar, this is one of the requirements that we will be auditing and monitoring the sites. Our monitoring criteria are detailed in our workers' welfare requirements. This also incorporates key elements from the international finance, cooperation, performance standards on labour and working conditions, and the Global Reporting Initiative standards, and of course, the UAE laws. Next slide. I'll hand over to Ravi now, who will take you through the Aldar in-country value certification.
Thank you, Leah. Good morning, all, and thank you, MBG, for inviting Aldar to participate in the ICV webinar this morning. My name is Ravi Walia, Assistant Vice President in Country Value, and I'm here to speak on three main areas of the ICV program relating to Aldar. The first one is the journey, then the applicability of the ICV program in our tenders, and finally the value add. Starting with the journey. In November 2019, Aldar announced partnership with ADNOC to launch the in-country value program. The ICV at that point of time was version 2, and there was a parallel certificate being run in the market by Department of Economic Development. So we did not introduce to our suppliers version 2 or that certificate only in first quarter 2020, the unified certificate version 3 came into market. And since then, Aldar has gradually implemented the ICV program in phases. We announced this program to the market and communicated it to the suppliers. We then embedded the ICV program into technical evaluation. We have a different approach, unlike ADNOC and DED and the other participating entities, where we do not have an improvement plan and where ICV is embedded in the technical evaluation. Having said this, DED and ADNOC, they have embedded it in the commercial evaluation. Now I will talk about the second part, the applicability. ICV is applicable for all contracts and tenders. Unlike other participating entities where they might have a threshold, but in our case, it's applicable across all contracts and tenders for all the value of tenders, irrespective of the value. The third part, value addition. How does Aldar add value to the program? Aldar adds value to the program by extending it into the real estate sector, and this helps to drive the growth and diversification of the UAE economy. I'll give you an example. The MOU Aldar signed with ADQ in the last quarter of the year 2020, where Aldar's in-country program will ensure that the majority of the contracts are now prioritized toward local contractors, consultants, suppliers, including SMEs, to ensure as much as possible is reinvested back into the local economy. At the same time, Aldar will ensure the development of these projects is aligned to the company's sustainability objectives, especially with regards to environmental standards, materials procurement, and workers' welfare. We are aiming to capture the vast majority of our domestic purchases through the ICV program, in addition to encouraging our own supplier to build up their in-country supply chains. We are driving local investment in assets and raw material. Having said this, we are also working with hundreds of UAE nationals into bringing them into the workforce. We are also ensuring new talent benefit from training and development opportunities under the ICV program. Another example I would give where we have added value, Sanduk Al-Watan, which is very much part and parcel of ICV. Mr. Tahir will take you through this this Santu Kalpatan program where the suppliers can benefit. Aldar have already contributed over 120 million over the last 4 years. That's all from my end. I will wait for the question at the end of the webinar. And in case anybody would like to contact us, our details are mentioned towards the end of the slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah, and thank you, Ravi, so much for beautifully explaining what wonderful job Aldar is doing, both for the environment as well as the economy. So we now again jump onto the ICV formula in detail. So what I'll be doing is I'll be taking you through each of the individual components that contributes to the ICV score and what points a company needs to keep in mind. So let's start off with the goods manufacturer / the service provider. As we have seen that this contributes 50% to the total cost. So here we need to understand that the companies are classified based on the type of license that they hold. So any company that has a goods manufacturing or an industrial license would be classified as a manufacturer, as we see on the top. All other companies into trading, into service providers, etc., will be treated as service providers for ICV certification purposes. So here, as far as the manufacturers are concerned, they have to split their local purchases into 3 categories. One is purchases being made from other industrial license vendors, purchases being made from local non-industrial license vendors, and the third category would be the purchases done from outside UAE. So each of them has a different ICV score allotment, and based on which the total ICV score under this particular area will be calculated for manufacturers. Whereas for service providers, they just need to break the vendors into 2 categories. One is the local vendors and one is the non-local vendors, which is basically vendors outside UAE. And then based on the ICV score of the vendors or the location where the vendors are based out of, whether in mainland or in free zone, a particular ICV score is allotted to each of these vendors to calculate the ICV score of the company. So what is important over here is the companies needs to understand that ICV is not only related at one level. So only the tier 1 suppliers of any of these participating agencies are not the only ones who require ICV certificates, because their ICV score will further depend on the ICV score of their sub-suppliers or subcontractors. Thus, it creates a chain effect in the economy. And today, if you are not even one of the direct suppliers of the participating companies, you will be requiring an ICV certificate because your customer is a direct supplier. So in order to make sure that your customer has a good ICV score, he will force you to get your ICV certification done. And similarly, you will want to pass on at your supplier's level as well. So it creates a chain effect in the economy, and I would say more or less you will require an ICV certification to remain competitive or to have a competitive edge over your suppliers. So that's are the elements that would contribute in terms of the ICV under the goods manufacturing category. Rahul, if we move on to the next slide. So here, as we are talking about investments, and as I mentioned earlier, we have put it on the screen here. So basically, investments will include all kinds of costs which a company will spend on property, plant and equipments, which will be categorized under IAS 16 under IFRS. Any kind of other software or non-intangible costs related to software, capital work in progress, or any other investment properties in terms of land, building, etc. that a company has spent on and is also appearing under the audited financial statements of the company. So there are a couple of points that a company needs to keep in mind. All these investments should be reflected under the audited financial statements. Plus, the ownership should be in the name of the company. So, in case the ownership is in the any private individual who might be the owner of the company, these kind of investments shall not be considered. The ownership documents, especially for land and building as well, should be under the name of the company, and as well as all other purchase invoices should be there under the name of the company. So this section contributes a total of 25%. So as we see in the brackets given below, any investments that a company has made up to 5 million dirhams will help them fetch a flat 10% ICV score. And then based on further level of investments between 5 and 150 million, a company can claim a pro rata score of additional 15%. Thus, once a company touches a 150 million mark, they will be able to score a complete 25% in this category. So that's how the scoring under the investment category is distributed. We move towards the next slide, which is on amortization. So now I will say this is one of the most significant component as far as its contribution to ICV certification is concerned, because there is a straight 15% allocated for Emirati costs spent by the company, plus 100% of the Emirati cost also gets added to your numerator in the first category of goods manufacturing. So that helps you to increase your score under the first section as well. Plus, there is a separate bonus which we will go through, which a company can claim if they have Emirati employees on board. So I would say it has a triple impact or a triple benefit on the ICV score of the company. So here, by Emiratization cost, we are talking about the employees who are UAE nationals and are on the payroll of the company. So they should be having a labor card issued by the company under the company's name, for which the ICV certification is being done. In terms of the direct score over here, any salaries paid to Emirati employees up to 200,000 dirhams annually will contribute a 15% to the ICV score. Will contribute a 2% to the ICV score of the company. And then between 200 and 20 million is where a company can progressively claim an additional 13% ICV score. So that will help the company to claim a complete 15% ICV score once the salary or the total cost spent on Emirati employees exceeds 20 million in a year. Now, what is interesting over here is, like Mr. Ravi also mentioned earlier, and how Aldar has contributed over 120 million to Sanduk al-Watan. So any donations that is made to Sanduk al-Watan or any of the government universities. So there is a list of about 17 to 18 universities that have been prescribed under the Unified ICV program. So any donations made through Sanduk al-Watan or through any of these universities are eligible to be claimed as payment made to Emirati employees. So these will get added to the Emirati costs while calculating the ICV score of the company. So this is a way to improve the ICV score by the companies as well. And we move on to the next slide in terms of expats contribution. So obviously the recognition is also given for hiring expat employees under the ICB program, as it creates job employment opportunities within the economy. Over here, we see that there is a total score of 10% which is allowed, and based on the number of expats, the number of employees that are there on the company's visas and salaries being processed through WPS, a company will fit in one of those brackets and they will be able to claim the ICV score subject to a maximum of 10%. And similarly to the expat cost, 60% of the expat cost gets added to the goods manufacturing part as well, unlike the 100% which gets added for Emirati employees. So 60% of your costs get added under the first section, which helps you to improve the score under the goods manufacturing category. And based on the headcount, a company gets a score out of 10% under the expat category. Obviously, it is important to make sure that these employees the hiring process is properly completed. The visas are issued out of the entity which is getting the ICV certification done. The salaries are paid through WPS. In case WPS are not applicable, then proper evidence to show the payment has been done to the employee should be made available to the certifying bodies. So that's in terms of the expat contribution. And now we move on to the last section, which is the bonus. So bonus helps companies to cover up an additional 5% if that it might be losing out in any of the areas. So obviously a company that is in here, we see that there are 3 factors through which the bonus score can be claimed. Any kind of revenue that is being generated by a company from outside UAE will be considered as an export revenue. So what is important over here is there should be a value addition done by the companies. So here, only in case there is just a pure trading business where company buys and sells outside UAE, will generally fall into a re-exports category. So if there is a value addition, a company will be eligible for a bonus score. The number of Emiratis that are there on the company's payroll will also add to the bonus, like I mentioned earlier. And lastly, which is a new addition under the ICV program in middle 2020. So now, in case the company has an increase in the net book value of investments as compared to the last year. So by showing that there is a constant improvement in the investments made by the company, they are also able to claim a bonus under the ICV score. So those are the 3, I would say those are the 3 components that will contribute to the bonus element under the ICV score. Now we move on to the next slide, Rahul. So here what I will try and explain is how multidimensional the ICV program is. So here basically we need to understand that ICV program, from what a lot of companies understand, is basically all that a finance department has to handle, which is not the case. Based on our experience in the ICV program, where we have completed about more than 1500 plus ICV certifications, companies that involve all their departments together, work as a team, are able to work constantly on improving their ICV scores. So right from procurement, because obviously the procurement policies have to be defined well in advance. The supplier selection is very important. Getting the right terms and conditions in the contracts with the suppliers is important. At the same time, as far as the investment departments are there, to have a proper strategy in place, keeping in mind its impact on the ICV score. HR plays a very important role in making sure that the employment takes place at the right time, because earlier the number of employees on the payroll at the end of the year were considered for the computation of ICV scores. Now it is an average number of employees during the whole year. So the correct timing of hiring of employees plays a role here as well. In terms of legal and commercial, we have seen that generally companies have a lot of companies floated across UAE, and what happens as a matter is a lot of assets and employees get distributed across various companies, which are all under the common ownership. So this needs to be planned well in advance to make sure that our assets are concentrated at one place, so that we are able to optimize them in terms of our ICV score as well. And then obviously financing and other risk management issues will take place as well. So all the departments of a company will generally have to work hand in hand to work towards one common objective of optimizing their ICV scores, because as we have seen that ICV score will play an important role both through technical and commercial evaluations of companies in helping them to win various tenders with various participating agencies. We move on to the next slide, Rahul. Quickly, I just want to explain the different types of companies in terms of ICV certification. So like I mentioned, firstly, the companies are classified into manufacturing and service providers based on the type of license that they hold. Now, there is further a regional bifurcation done. For example, any company in mainland UAE will be considered as a company within UAE, Thus, they are eligible to claim an ICV score in all the components that we have seen earlier. Whereas companies situated in free zones, they are further bifurcated into two categories. One is companies engaged in manufacturing and not in manufacturing. So manufacturing companies will be treated on par with a mainland company, and they are able to claim the ICV score under all the attributes for the ICV certification. Whereas service providers in free zone are not able to claim any score on the investment tab. So they straight away lose out the 15% on the ICV score, and they are able to claim the ICV score only on the balance attributes. Offshore company is treated similarly outside UAE, so thus investment is not eligible to them. A representative and a branch will be depending on the situation or the location of the parent or the main company. They will be considered, and they will accordingly be eligible to claim all the attributes, or if they are treated as outside UAE, again they will not be able to claim the investment ICV score. So this needs to be kept in mind as well while making the legal decisions in terms of placement of the company, because that will have definitely a serious impact on the ICV scores as well. Yes, I'll hand over the mic to Lydia, who can quickly then pass it over.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Leah, Mr. Ravi, and Taher for these interesting insights. As a last speaker, I would like to welcome Mr. Piyush Jorda, who is partner at MBG Corporate Services. Mr. Jorda has over 27 years of experience in the finance and accounts domain, which includes financial control, cash management and banking, fundraising, business forecasting, and taxation across Middle East, India, and Africa. Besides advising many global corporates, he has been engaged with several Japanese companies. His expertise includes strategy, planning and execution, business process re-engineering, financial business restructuring, commercial operations, legal matters, statutory compliance, and startups. His specialties also include strategy, planning and execution, business process re-engineering, financials, business restructuring and commercial operation, legal matters, and statutory compliance. We look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Piyush.
Thank you, Lydia, for introduction. So let's discuss on the key consideration in ICV certification process. To start with, first of all the financial used to issue the certificate should be based on International Financial Reporting Standard, that is IFRS, and it has to be audited by the auditor licensed by Minister of Economy. So this is the first condition. Secondly, branches in the same Emirates with identical activities and ownership listed on the license are eligible for one combined ICV certificate. So here the companies are required to pay close attention towards the activity listed in their respective trade license along with the ownership to decide whether the combined ICV is possible or it's not possible. Anyway, the branches situated in different Emirates need to get ICV separately. Now coming to the payments to the free zone and government authorities. So payments to free zone regulators and the government license entities qualify for 100% ICV score, but the condition is it has to be properly documented. If it is not properly documented, then no score will be awarded for all this kind of expenditure incurred by the company. And the most important thing here is that all the companies should make this payment directly to the authorities, because what we observe is companies are paying these fees and other things through the intermediary. So what happens is that if the intermediary is in between, then the score of the intermediary will be counted. So instead of 100% full ICV score, so it is advisable that the company should make the payment directly to the authorities instead of involving any intermediaries in between. Now, as far as the grade for the mainland suppliers, that's a default score. For ICV calculation purpose, for a service provider who is in a mainland, will automatically granted a 10% ICV score. So in case the vendor is not having an ICV score, or if his ICV score is less than 10%, then by default, he will qualify for 10% ICV score. Now, the another point is the salary to the Emirati owner. The salary of Emirati owner as per the trade license paid through the WPS can be included under amortization, subject to cap of dirham 120,000 per month per owner. But the bonus and other benefits will be excluded. Further, where the Emirati cost is being charged off by a group entity, then these costs can be considered as a part of overall manpower cost. However, this Emirati shall not be considered for total number of manpower, and it shall not affect the Emirati bonus elements. Next one is the bit departure from revision 2. In revision 3, all internal costs are excluded from the calculation except for the depreciation and amortization cost. So the provision for bad debts, loss on sale of fixed asset, net forex loss, or provision for slow moving inventory, etc., will be removed from the numerator as per the denominator in the ICV formula. Here I would like to mention something about the investment also. So all investments, as Tahir mentioned earlier, not in the name of the company, will not qualify as an investment. Further, one more thing is there, that all the right to use asset will also not qualify as an investment, and corresponding depreciation will not qualify as an internal cost. So all the assets which are not owned by the company or an all right to use asset, they will not qualify as an investment. Neither the depreciation, corresponding depreciation will qualify for as an internal cost. Now come to the headcount. The headcount of the employees to be considered in supply submission template is the average for the full year, not for the year end. It was the case with the revision 2. So companies are requested to obtain a WPS statistical report and calculate the average number of employees throughout the year. And at the end, the validity of certificate is for 14 months from the issuance of the audited financial statement. Now come to the bid submission by agent and principal. When the bids are submitted by the agent on behalf of the principal, and then agent is required to produce separate ICV certificate for himself and as well as for the principal. And we will take the combined average ICV score of the agent and principal for the ICV evaluation or for the commercial and technical evaluation. But where the bid is submitted by the principal only, then 100% principal score will be considered for the purpose. Now, this is a very unique case where companies are forming a joint venture or consortium on unincorporated basis. Means there is no legal entity coming into the existence, but it is an unincorporated joint venture or consortium. So how to calculate the ICV? So for example, if the company A, B, and C are forming a joint venture or joint venture with 70, 20, and 10% equity stake in the joint venture company, then to calculate the ICV score for the joint venture company, we'll have to take the ICV score based on the percentage, equity percentage of the respective company in the joint venture. So in joint venture, ICV will be, say, 70% of ICV of company A, 20% ICV of company B, and 10% ICV score of company C. And in case the equity stake of the partner is not available, then we will take simple average of all the 3 ICVs. So that's all from my side. Lydia, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Piyush. Actually, we have been receiving a lot of questions. I think this emphasizes on the importance of ICV here in the UAE. Due to the interest of time, we will not be able to take all the queries, but we'll get back to you individual, or the contact details of Aldar as well as MBG will be shown on the last slide. Rahul, we can move on to the question and answer. So the first question is actually addressing Mr. Ravi. What is the difference between ICV 3.0 and ICV 2.0?
Thank you very much. Now the ICV version 3.0 is applicable across to all the participating entities, starting from Aldar, ADNOC, Department of Economic Development, and all the department working under Department of Economic Development, Mubadala, ENEC, and Abu Dhabi ports. This is the latest and the unified version, which is called version 3.0. The earlier version 2.0 is no more valid, and that was applicable only for ad hoc tenders. So I repeat, anybody entering into a ICV, getting an ICV certificate can use this certificate at the time of tendering across any of these participating entities, which is the version 3.0. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravi. The next question I would like to address to Mr. Piyush Jorda, and we are actually receiving a lot of queries in this regard. The question is, if a company has branches in 4 Emirates, is it possible to issue only one ICV certificate?
As explained just before this Q&A session, if the branches are situated in different Emirates, then company needs to have separate ICV certificate for all the branches in different Emirates. So separate ICV requirement will be there for each branch. You cannot combine ICV certificate for all the branches situated in different Emirates.
Okay. Thank you for this. And I think due to the interest of time, as I said, we will take one more question, and then we are happy to answer this question post the session. Taher, can the percentage of the ICV score vary from one certifying body to another?
That's an interesting one. I would say it would mostly not be the case, because as the process and the efforts put in by the ICV committee, they have standardized the process to the extent possible, and there is a straightforward and a simple agreed upon procedures and guidelines which have been issued to all the ICV certifying bodies, and which is uniformly adopted by all of them. So based on the financial statements that would be presented, more or less, with either of the certifying bodies, they would be around the same ICV score. So there shouldn't be any issues, and there are common practices being adopted by all certifying bodies now.
Thank you. So now it's 12:04. That brings us to the end of the session. I would like to thank everyone for your time today, each one of you, and especially a big thanks for Aldar for co-organizing this session. Here are the contact details, icv@aldar.com or UAE@mbgcorp.com. In case you have any further question, please feel free to contact us at any point of time. And I would like to wish everyone a great day ahead. Please stay safe. Thank you so much.